Alright, so before we get started with this video, I just want to say I hope you guys are all staying safe, and I hope none of you guys or your friends or family have been affected by the coronavirus. Remember, stay inside and social distance, and I just hope you guys are all doing well and staying healthy. So without any further ado, let's get started with the video. Now I know that the new iPad Pros are being released soon, but let's face it, that's a lot of money. So in this video, I'm going to be reviewing the iPad 6th generation and seeing if it is still a viable alternative to the more expensive iPad Pro. Hey, how's it going everyone, and welcome back to another video of the Infinite Tech YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to be reviewing the iPad Pro 6th generation and seeing if it is still a good iPad to buy in 2020. So without any further ado guys, let's get started with the video. Now real quick before we start, I just want to give you a range of the price for this tablet. I did a quick search and it was around $200 to $300. So just giving you guys a sense of how much you can get this tablet for, and that's kind of the price I'll be reviewing it at instead of the price at which it launched at. Alright, let's get started with some background about the iPad. There hasn't really been much competition for the iPad in the tablet industry. There have been a few attempts by Samsung and Google, but the iPad is just a better tablet overall. But that comes at Apple's premium price tag that many of us have trouble affording. Luckily, this iPad has come down quite a bit in price, and today we will see whether it is a reliable and fast tablet in 2020. Starting with the build quality, the iPad definitely holds its ground in 2020. It has a familiar all-aluminum build that is surprisingly lightweight. It certainly doesn't look as sleek as the thin bezeled iPad Pro, but if you're not a fan of that design or you just don't mind bezels, I think this tablet will still hold up very well for you in 2020. It still keeps the fingerprint scanner to the bottom of the 9.7-inch IPS LCD display, which I appreciate, as well as a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera. The iPad also retains the headphone jack and has the usual volume and power buttons to the right and top of the device respectively. But honestly, there's nothing revolutionary about this design. If you've used iPads in the past, or even if you've used Apple devices in general, this design should be very familiar to you, and I think that it still works very well in 2020. It feels sturdy, it's quite lightweight, and I just think it holds up very well this year. Apple devices don't necessarily need the highest end specs to be able to run the OS well and smooth. But for those who care, here's a quick rundown of the specs of the iPad. The iPad here has an Apple A10 Fusion chip with only 2GB of RAM and an 8827 mAh battery. Now I know 2GB of RAM might seem very low this year, and honestly I think it is compared to phones like the S20 Ultra and even OnePlus phones coming out with 12GB of RAM. 2GB of RAM looks very small, especially in this day and age. But I will talk about more about multitasking and performance later in this video. There's also an 8 megapixel f2.4 camera on the back. Now admittedly, these specs don't look great on paper, but let's get into performance and the software experience on this iPad. So the iPad is currently running iPad OS 13.4.1, which is one of the most wanted and biggest changes that has come to iPads recently. This OS is more tablet friendly, giving the iPad features such as a desktop level Safari browser and better multitasking, among many other useful features. Now, I won't get into all the changes of the iPad OS, but if you do want to know more about it, there are plenty of YouTubes on video that cover the iPad OS extensively, so you guys can go check that out. Now given the specs, I would say the iPad 6th generation actually performs very well, thanks to iOS's incredible optimization. Some of you may be skeptical of the 2GB of RAM as I was, but I will say that light multitasking actually works really well, but I will say if you want to do some heavy multitasking, it will bog the iPad down a little bit, and it does start to stutter and close apps in the background, which is understandable given that it only has 2GB of RAM. However, if you are just a light multitasker, I think you guys will find this tablet very acceptable in its performance and in its light multitasking capabilities. In terms of general performance, I would say it's actually very good. Applications open up reasonably quickly, and transitions are very smooth thanks to, once again, the optimization of iOS. The screen on this iPad is nothing amazing, but it's good for most people. It has a 9.7-inch IPS LCD panel with a resolution of 1536 by 2048. I will say that I would have liked to see an OLED display. I just prefer the way they look. You get those nice deep blacks and saturated colors, but I think the screen does look very nice. It gets pretty bright, it has really good viewing angles, and I would say it produces some very nice natural colors. In terms of media experience with this iPad, gaming was very good given the specs. Even intensive games like PUBG ran very well with little to no stuttering. And watching movies and videos was also really nice because the screen, like I said, does get very bright. It looks really good and has great viewing angles. So watching movies and videos was also a pleasure. Now, all this media consumption definitely takes a toll on battery life. However, this iPad comes with a respectable 8,827 mAh battery. Now, honestly, I'm not a heavy user when it comes to the tablet. I mainly just use it for playing games or watching some videos. And I can say I was able to easily get through one full day of use with this tablet. However, I can't say the same for heavy users. I would carry my charger with me if I were you. I might have to top up at the end of the day if I were a heavy user. But for lighter users like myself, I was able to get through the day with a reasonable amount of battery life left over. So overall, battery life is pretty good, but it's not outstanding like you might find in some of the newer Apple devices. Now on to one of the least important aspects of this tablet, the cameras. I'm just going to go over this briefly because I really don't think anyone buys an iPad for its camera quality. So on the front, it has a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera that takes very soft and pretty grainy photos. It's clear that Apple put very little emphasis on the camera, as they should, and I would definitely not recommend taking any selfies or any front-facing shots with this camera. Now the back camera is a little better. It is an 8 megapixel shooter. It does take better quality photos, but still nowhere near Apple's phones. And I would say that if you're looking to take photos, I would stick with your phone or find some other device. And I really don't know anyone who takes a lot of photos on their iPad. So yeah, these cameras aren't great, and I just wouldn't recommend taking a lot of photos with them. But the bottom line is, the iPad 6th generation is still a very good device in 2020 for what its purpose is, which is watching media, doing some light tasks, and maybe playing games if you're into it. Now the latest iPad Pro is the most similar to a laptop as any tablet Apple has produced, with the uniquely integrated mouse support as well as a separate keyboard with a trackpad. However, if you're not looking to replace your laptop with your tablet, I think this iPad holds up very well in 2020, especially for its price. It has a really nice display, it has reasonably well performance, and it's still getting the latest iOS updates, so I wouldn't hesitate recommending this tablet for people who are looking for a new iPad and who are on a budget in 2020. So that is the iPad 6th generation review for you guys. Thought I'd put out some content for those of us who are in quarantine and are pretty bored, quite frankly. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Once again, I hope you guys are staying safe and staying healthy. And yeah, please leave a like if you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one.